Well, hello and welcome. Happy New Year. Really excited about where we're going this year. Lots to share. I hope you'll enjoy today's session. It's one of my uh, favorite topics. I call it one of my pet topics. It's something that goes back several decades for me. So I'll touch on that. But before we get started, please give me a thumbs up in the chat. Let's make sure the technology is working. And again, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We'll get started. It's exciting, right? All right. January. And the new year is off to a great start. So great. Thanks and welcome. Let me just get the tech happening. Yep, looks like we're all good to go. All right, so topic today is behavior design, or design your systems and behavior to support each other. And if you've been with me on this journey, it's really from the book. And I've deliberately been working through the book in stages because the book is structured that way. And that's volume 1. Okay. And if you really want to follow through with me, volume 2 is going to take the 4 parts that I've covered and walk you through the journey. Okay. And the journey is, if you, again, follow the book, it starts with self-awareness. So if you want to be a great leader, you need to do the inward looking first. And if you're interested to start that journey, Lisa is the assessment that we have online, which is free, by the way, that you can do. And it just simply replace the books in the URL on the bottom of the screen there with Lisa, okay, biq.org/Lisa. And so self-awareness is first, the inward looking. Then the observable dynamics, observing others, the ability, the skill to observe and look outwards is 2. Then you adopt and adapt your leadership style according to that inward information and the outward information. So that's the journey we've covered so far from the book. And now in this 9-week series, we close off with the behavior design with the systems. Systems need to support your behavior objectives. Okay. So what do I mean by that? Let me give you some examples. We did this, a lot of consulting work with organizations in the late 80s, and I'm seeing it today. In fact, I'd share with you some of the stories, but when you're adopting technology into your organization, whether it's automation, AI, or just a plain old CRM, the challenge is, do you create it to work the way that you do work today? So if you've been doing your sales on bits of paper and spreadsheets, right? Do you want to replace those with stuff that's exactly the same way and that follows the way you do things? Or do you buy a product so the alternative to building it from scratch is to take it off the shelf? And if you take it off the shelf, like many products out there, guess what? That's a huge challenge for your team to then have to change the way they do things to do it the way that system works. And I see it so much. I've talked to so many people over the years, and I still see it today. People get excited about all the tools and systems that we have in our business intelligence platform. And it's dive in, we're all excited, and then everybody goes back to the way they used to do things, and they drop off, right? Then 3 months go by, they cancel that because they're not using it. Another 3 months go by and they go, oh, we need assistance. So they come back on. And it happens just so much. So, there's probably a whole new course that I need to launch around this, but the concept is really very important to remember that, behavior is the thing that is either going to support and empower your organization, and the systems are what's going to empower the people, the behavior, right? So when we get this wrong, let me get my clicker working. There we go. So the paradox is organizations invest so much into SOPs and processes and CRMs and all of these tools, but adoption stalls. Nothing happens, or there's a spike of excitement and then it phases off and no change actually is sustainable, right? The missing ingredient is what we're going to talk about today, all the steps within that to make sure that people adapt and adopt your processes, those processes and systems and tools. And, I'll just share with you what I used to do with a lot of organizations when I was consulting in those years, was shadowing people, and we're going to talk about that, but mapping the steps that they take. When we talk about process, a lot of people get it instantly, and there's a whole bunch of other people that can't get past of the way I do things. And that's really what we're talking about, is shadowing somebody to watch the way they do things is actually a process that can be mapped. And it's that we need to link the tools, the AI, the automation, the capturing of data, all of that becomes part of that. So today is really about walking you through the implementation of a 6-step process that allows you to do that effectively, so that your organization is empowered through the people and the systems working together. Okay. So you start with the people, not what you would hope for. You work with the systems. The systems need to reinforce the behavior. Why don't I just dive into these so we can get into them? Okay. So start with what people do. That's principle number 1. Okay. What does that mean? It means, we'll look at examples first of failures, because it's really what I do often in training people in new concepts like this. They've got to do it and recognize the challenge before they'll move to a new way of doing things. And it's really not always new, so let's touch on that. So the checklist that failed, the sales organization rolled out a lead qualification checklist. Did that spike at 6 months. There was less than 20% adoption, and the incentive failed, and they had to spend more time training people and try that over and over again. And I see it's a continuous loop for a lot of organizations, hard to break out of, right? So especially with salespeople, and when it comes to using systems, if it's going to get in the way of a salesperson achieving their quota, that system just takes a back door, right? So we need to understand the importance of having those systems empowering and allowing them to do more and exceed what they would normally do through the adoption and adapting those systems to, right? So first, you need to observe, uncover the reality, shadow people, pick a few people, pick those that like to stay within a system and are consistent, and those that do things a little bit differently. Okay, so that you can recognize the benefit and the value of both. And the shadowing, whether you do it by camera or you hire someone who just goes around and shadows that person, okay, or those people, the mapping is the critical part that allows you to align the tools and the systems to the way they do things, okay? So behavioral shadowing, we call it, and it's important to do that as a starting point. And as I mentioned earlier, I just see it so much with all the systems and tools that we have. It's exciting. People jump on and nothing happens. Okay, that's because they didn't map how they do things. We have a project, we have a couple of organizations we're doing this with at the moment, where we're taking the existing system and we're modifying it so that it works the way they work, or we're creating new software for them that enables them to continue to work the way they work. That is sometimes the organization's key differentiator, is the way they do things right now. Okay, if everybody adopts a platform that causes you to do things the same way in the same industry, then there's really no differentiation. You need to think about that. Okay, so the mapping and the shadowing is critical part of that process. Okay. Then systems must reinforce the right behavior, right? So here's another example that I captured for you. Company mandated quarterly performance reviews, and completion rates stuck at 50%, leadership band. And the problem was the managers weren't really following through with that. The mobile access to the team members was poor. The technology was difficult to use. The triggers, the workflows, the information was going to the employee. Nothing was really being followed through with the leadership, and it didn't really achieve what it needed to achieve. So we need to align the system triggers, okay, to map with the workflow. Prompts appear where people already work, right? So the reminders, the pop-ups, the phone, whether it's a job completion or a sales call, what are the prompts that happen automatically, because then they will adopt and adapt to that style. Okay, so if you want to do this, right, this is, call it the assumption stress test, right? Pick 3 assumptions and experiment, follow it through, look at how people are doing things, survey them, whatever you need to do, so that you can see where it fails. Okay, again, going back in the 80s, we actually had a usability lab where we actually watched people's behavior as they used the system. We watched where they stopped, where they failed, where the system interrupted their process. All of these things were critical to create solutions, software solutions that really empowered people. Okay, so this isn't new stuff. I've been doing this for decades. Another example, so when we talk here about policies don't create behaviors, okay, HR example required these peer-to-peer accountability recognition, assumed the employees would love it and praise it, and months later there was really hardly anything happening. The policy alone did not create the change. Okay, so the way to do it, that they learned from that, was we needed to have kudos moments. We needed to take and assign champions to lead that. I often rotate that, and that's really important, so you can move it around. Everybody gets to be on 2 sides of the tracking versus the reporting. Okay, and so that creates a unique psychology that allows them to then embrace it and take it on board. The rituals that you put in place, it's got to be practiced, right? We talk about this so much through all of my sessions. Repetition creates automatic unconscious behaviors if you want those to be the underpinning of culture. Because what is culture? I've talked about that as well. It's the observable behavior in a particular situation that is consistent amongst your group. Okay, so it can only reach that through repetition, through rewards, through pilots, measurements, and again, sharing and co-creating, I think, is a good word for that. When you create it in isolation, it's really just for you. But when you create it together and you tweak it, don't launch something huge from day one. It's not going to work. Okay, get them to participate in the co-creation in stages. All right. So your rituals, defining the roles around those, putting a champion in place, the peer-to-peer that we talked about can't work unless you have a champion that feels that they are responsible for the group, right? It's almost like, you can't play a team sport without having a captain, right? Or a coach. Okay, so you need to put those in place. Looking for the friction points and not labeling them as failure, not judging those friction points, but actually looking at where they are causing the system, the process to stall. Right? So another example, service delivery process had multiple steps. Employees missed a lot of the stages within those steps, and the judgment from the leadership team was they are non-compliant, nobody wants to do it, they're resisting it, we have a problem with the team, rather than the reality was the system. Okay, so in the study that was done there, when people went to do things, they clicked something, it took them to another system, or they had to log in again, they were jumping around, it was disruptive rather than supporting them. I know in ISO 9000, there's a lot of checkpoints and sign-off stages. How do you implement that so that it flows within what they're doing rather than disrupting and having to, leave one building to go to another building to get a sign-off, all of that crazy stuff, right? It's so simple, guys, but it doesn't get done. You'd be surprised how often we see this through the looking at how organizations implement technology or systems. And today AI is huge. That's going to be an interesting journey as well. So friction points, right? Most important thing is don't penalize people until you've looked at the systems. Don't and I've seen this firsthand where we would pull people aside, almost berating them for not doing what they should be doing within the system, rather than looking at them and saying, hey, maybe you're one that we should be watching and figuring out why that's not working for you, so that we can actually make it work better, right? So that friction point is important to recognize. So look at it from different ways, make sure you go from end to end. Don't just, I see that as well. People find the first problem, they spend all their time fixing it, but really recognizing after they fixed it that there was another problem behind that was really more the critical point than all the effort that they wasted at the front end, right? So follow a process right through. Okay. I came up with a system I call the causality loops, and I've touched on that. If you've done my training, you go into how the handoff happens between different departments, but also the handoff between systems and people, and that interaction is important because it is a causality loop. It triggers one thing and it goes into, when it's automated, a process is like a loop, right? It repeats, and every time it triggers, it does the same thing. So that's a good tool to use for that. Yes, I have lots of tools, lots of acronyms that just help us to do things more effectively, more quickly. So resolution for the top 2 friction points, did a brainstorming, co-created, consolidated the forms, automated some of the approval processes so that people didn't have to chase it around, and all of that allowed the adoption to take place. Number 5, design behaviors into roles. And again, I might be repeating myself, but all of these things link together, and that's why that journey through the book is important. So we often see the performance guidelines and the performance and the role descriptions based around the tasks that someone needs to do, not how they should do it. So in this context, they wanted to introduce people to be proactive rather than reactive. Okay, and in order to do that, this was brought into place, and but nobody adjusted the role description. So when that happens, people revert back to what's in their job description. Well, it's not in my job description, right? So we built a complete performance guideline that is based on behavior. In fact, it was tied into the AccuMatch assessment that we do to help adjust that and to provide people with a tool that then links what we see on their map, how they are programmed versus where we want the KPIs and the performance to change, and what behavior allows that to happen. So, if you followed all of that, it really comes down to, you can't just put KPIs in front of people and expect them to just magically happen. You can't put systems in front of people and expect them to automatically adopt them. You need to look at the behavior and figure out the design of the behavior, and the role is an important part of that. Right? So take 4 to 6 critical behaviors for each key position and define the observable standard that you're looking for. So this is subjective, guys. Yes, absolutely. You need to observe the behavior before you can judge it. You can't judge something that you don't see, if a tree falls in the forest, doesn't make a sound, right? No, you need to be able to document the observable behavior that you are looking for. Link the behavior to the performance and the KPIs. Okay. Yes, I know you're a superstar salesperson, but your behavior is undermining the whole team. Okay, well, what is that behavior that's causing that? Let's map that out. So, because what we're really looking to do is not just have one superstar, but a whole bunch of successful salespeople. Okay, so need to look at that, right? Short-lived Kaizen. These are, one-time improvements. The organization gets excited, they launch something, and everybody then reverts to their old habits when that one-time improvement is finished. Okay. A good example of that was competitions, right? The ladder systems that we see, right? If they're not consistent, then people will just go, yeah, they'll go hard and they'll win the prize and be the employee of the year, and then nothing happens. No change happens because it was just a little blip. Okay. So sustainability requires loops. I've talked about my loops, causality loops. If you're interested, do reach out. Okay. A lot of training happens. We know from the statistics that are out there that after a training, 50% adoption is reduced within the first few weeks and 90% within 6 months. So, in order for workshops to really have a causality effect of change, you need that repetition loop. And so you need to practice. So the performance plan would be, pick 2 to 3 micro routines that you want to adjust and work on, set up some daily metrics and weekly celebrations and so on. We build that right into the training. Even when we are doing training with people, it has to be put into the process. Our coaching app and our leadership apps are both designed to also help support that. Okay, so what did we cover? This is week 1 of 9 from the part 4 of the book. All right, and that is designing behavior. And it's really focusing on systems and figuring out how to integrate the two together, identifying, as I've previously talked about, PAC, right? The process, automation, assigning, and then what's left is what you get to keep. Okay, so that's another one of those processes that you can embrace with us. All right, starting to lose my voice. So wrapping up today, your action items from this week: identify one process that is underperforming. We'll conduct a 30-minute behavioral shadow, right? If you need to follow somebody for a day or a week, you can assign that to someone to do. Okay. List the 3 assumptions that you have and look for the friction points rather than judging the non-compliance, right? Okay. Why aren't people adopting? We've paid so much money for this software and this system and nobody's using it. Oh my God, right? Okay, and that's unfortunately the reality. Okay, next week, okay, behavior-driven strategy and execution. Okay, so join me, same time, same channel next week. If there's any questions, we'll be online for those and taking care of that. So this is 9 weeks. The part 4 of the book has 8 chapters, and I always like to summarize with a recap of that. And then I'll be recapping the book as we get ready to launch volume 2 of the book. So I hope you have enjoyed the session today, and I look forward to seeing you next week. And if you have questions, be online, looking at the chat at the moment, and I will be responding directly. Thank you.